I'm all about you getting empowered to take care of you and understanding how you can run you better. We're all individual and unique, and you need to see, how does this actually make me feel?
Hello and welcome to Center for Victory's podcast of Your Best Day Yet. At Center for Victory, we're here to help unlock, reinforce, and enrich relationships through personal and professional development. I'm Eric Guy, Chief Victory Officer here at the Center for Victory. With me today, a very special person all the way out from Portland, Oregon, Dr. Jenny. She is a functional medicine educator. She's a board-certified naturopathic physician, and she's been in practice for, I think, over 20 years with a focus on getting chronically ill folks back to full health. So this is going to be an interesting talk because I know a lot of you out there who tune in, like myself, can really benefit from this because, well, I'm going to let her share a little bit. But she has programs too. This is going to be jam-packed with information. So I'm going to shut up, Dr. Jenny, and let us welcome you to the show. And then what other background do we need to know before we get into all this good stuff here?
Thank you so much for having me on here. It's just a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the big thing that I always hear from my work with top performers, I work with a lot of higher level people in companies, on, athletic teams, musicians, whatever it might be, but a lot of company people, uh, who are the higher level, that are the constant thing is, look, I'm tired all the time. I
Yeah.
can't work. I struggle with this. And I think you refer to that as all the pushing and doing. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, I think we really live in a push culture where we are always trying to push ourselves to be our best. And it's an interesting thing with growth mindset, which I'm a total fan of growth mindset. I love it. I'm in that as well. And in the growth mindset, there's this, yeah, I got to be really efficient and push myself. And I have these goals and these things that I'm working on. And I, when we just push and we don't listen, we can set up our bodies for problems. We can end up pushing ourselves beyond our limits and get into a state where the body gets dysregulated and we become susceptible to infections getting reactivated or new infections or any of the other root causes that can lead you to experiencing deep chronic fatigue. And then, of course, you're in a hole and it becomes a bit of a vicious cycle at that point.
Yeah, and you keep on going after it, going after it, going after
Right.
it. Not that I know
Right.
anything about it or you know anything about it, but I've just seen it over and over again, and I'm like, oh, Jesus! And you get it's so
Yes.
easy, like you said. I love that whole idea of a push culture because I think there is quite a bit of that. It's like, so how do you know when these things are coming on? Like, are there signs that?
There are a lot of signs. Yeah,
Okay.
there are a lot of signs. And you may even already know your signs. I think we each have our own individual signs.
Mm-hmm.
And those of you who are already struggling with fatigue, your body's been sending up some signals to you. Some classic ones would be um, even mood things like irritability, like you just feel more impatient, lack of excitement for what it is that you're doing. You usually enjoy putting on a podcast, but you're waking up in the morning going, oh man, like another guest, like, oh, okay, here I go. And so those can be some subtle signs that can be meaning that you just don't have the energy for what you're doing. Those would also be classic signs for burnout. And there is a difference between burnout and having myalgic encephalitis, chronic fatigue, or long COVID, but they're also on a continuum. Another sign is when your sleep is disrupted. And often we disrupt our own sleep because of a schedule, a deadline, something that we're pushing for. The question is how quickly, if you have that night that's short, you push yourself, how quickly can you get back onto your normal sleep schedule and feel rested when you wake up? If you're not feeling rested when you wake up in the morning, then there's something going on. What is that? Is it something easy that can be fixed, or is it a sign of something deeper that's going on? Another sign that can be we will probably get into this at some point, but in my work, I've uncovered that there are 5 pretty classic root causes to people getting chronic fatigue, myalgic encephalitis, and The first one I call the gateway root cause. And this is like, so for you, if you're out there being a high performer, and this is one that I certainly fell into as well, I call it the hormone triangle. So it's the thyroid, it's the adrenal gland, and it's the ovaries for women and testes for male. And that triangle interacts together. They support each other. If one is out of whack, the other ones try to balance out. So the classic thing is that we push ourselves in that adrenal gland, which is the master one in that triangle, gets completely thrown out of whack by drinking too much caffeine, by staying up at night, by pushing ourselves too far, too fast, too often without time to reset. And that is the gateway root cause for a lot of us in this culture to ending up into chronic fatigue, because what happens is when your cortisol levels get thrown off, either they're too high or too low, your immune system no longer functions normally. So it's very easy for a chronic virus to get reactivated, or for you to catch another virus and not be able to kick it out soon enough. It can also alter your hormone function, which can have large cascading impact on your body. And this is one that I see people chasing and not really realizing that this is one of their root causes. And one of the signs for this is an energy that goes up and down. So it may be that you feel great in the morning, but then in the afternoon you're crashing. You're like, oh man, I need that coffee. Like I gotta go. Or it could be that you could be flipped. You could be tired all day, and then it's time to go to bed. Finally, you get to go to bed, and ping, you are like wide awake at nighttime and cannot sleep. And it may be that you have low cortisol in the morning and you're super high at night. So these are signs of some of that gateway cause, I think, for some of the people who are like us and who want to do a lot in this planet, right? We want to do a
Mhm.
lot right now.
Yeah. So if I could back up, you said something that was interesting to me. I don't know if it's be interesting to anybody else, but you said there's a difference between burnout and chronic fatigue.
Yeah, right.
Uh, can you dive into that a little bit?
Sure,
Because I
sure.
think a
Yeah,
lot of people's like, "Well, I'm just burnout. I'm just burnout. I'm just burnout," and it could
right.
be the other. I think
It
there's a
could
much
be.
bigger issue for
It
a lot of
could
the
be.
people that I see.
I think I really appreciate you pointing that out, because I do think burnout is getting so much attention right now that a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I'm burnout. And then they just kind of keep going
Yeah.
rather than actually stopping and paying attention to that. If you feel like you're burnt out, I do think that means that you should have some support and some investigation into that. Is it really burnout, or do you have one of the deeper underlying root causes where this is actually chronic fatigue, or moving into chronic fatigue, or you're at risk for getting into chronic fatigue? What's the difference? It's like shades of gray going into black. So, I'll sort of mention some of them. And of course, people have differing opinions on this. So just tell you what my experience
Mhm.
is. Burnout it is very much not getting enough of it's a lot about the emotional body, a lot about burnout. So there's the physical body, the emotional body, and the energetic body. And when you're talking about burnout, it's often that we are not, sometimes it's because we haven't taken enough care of our physical body, that we're out of balance. We're not getting enough sleep. We're not getting enough exercise. We're not doing those things to meet the physical body. And or it has to do with the emotional body, where we're not getting fed back from our work what we originally did. It's lost meaning. So in my world,
Mm.
physicians, classic burnout situation, for where they show up and it's this compassion fatigue. It's like I keep giving and I'm not getting enough back. I'm not. And really what I think that is for a lot of people is they've lost connection with their why.
Yeah.
They've lost that. They've lost that heart connection. And so their work no longer has meaning. And so what do you need to do to find that meaning? If you're burnt out, then going on a vacation for 1 or 2 weeks or doing something that you absolutely love should really help you refine that energy and that source of you. And it may take some stepping back and doing, like, I know you do vision sessions, like one of
Mhm.
your visioning sessions, and seeing like, maybe I got myself into a situation. I'm kind of doing a thing that doesn't really live for me anymore. I need to rethink that and come back to something that does live for me now. And then your energy should come back. Your sleep should re-regulate. That passion for things should come back again. What's different is people who are really struggling with one of the root causes of chronic fatigue can have all the passion in the world, all the excitement. Like they so want to take their kids to the zoo, or they really want to write the book, or they really want to do the podcast, or they really want to start this business and just see it flourish. And they just don't have the oomph to carry through that dream. And that's
Mhm.
different. Do you see what I see?
Yeah, I mean, it's just because a lot of people do use that. I mean, it's like, well, I'm burnt out, and then they don't do anything about it, and then it's like
Right.
weeks or months later. And again, not that I know anything about that, but it's just like,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, you do that. It's you just
Sure.
push it off, push it off, push it off. And I think one of the things that I've struggled with, that's been pointed out to me over the years that I've gotten much better at is that piece that you said with docs, that the compassion fatigue. I mean,
Yeah.
you just go, you
Right.
give, you give, you give, you
Yeah.
give, you give,
Right.
and you're not really getting anything, and then you feel bad for wanting to get something.
Right. Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
then it,
that's an internal messaging problem,
yeah,
right? That's an internal messaging. That means that there's something going on with what you're telling yourself with your
mm-hmm,
subconscious mind or that low background tape that hasn't
yeah,
been pulled up. And what I would say to all of us who are entrepreneurs, business owners, corp, athletes, whatever, if there was, we all have markers that we're looking at that we would pay attention to. If you're an athlete and you're running, you're a runner, and your speeds are slowing down, you would get attention immediately if you're a professional athlete to figure out why are my numbers going down. You would reach out to your coach, your nutritionist, you would get your metabolics, you would figure it out. Like, why are my numbers going down? What is it? Is it my form? Is it my body? Is it my mindset? What is it, right? Same thing if you're a business and you're looking at your bottom line. If your numbers are going down, you're going to figure out why. Like what's going on? What's the problem? We put our bodies off. Why don't we do the same thing with health, right? Why don't we as soon as we catch in our weekly assessment as to what's happening, why don't we catch that and say, God, I just don't, I haven't been able to bring it this week, or I'm dragging myself, like, and start asking, what do I need? And who do I need to bring in to help me get through this? Which coach, which, health provider, which nutritionist, which tree do I need to go sit under? You know what I mean? Like, what is it?
yeah. And then before I forget, I know this is a little bit off of what you just said, but I have to ask it because I don't want to forget because it always comes up.
Yeah.
Because very, very early in my career, I would say, strung out on coffee. I mean,
Hmm.
it was just caffeine. I mean, to the point
Hmm.
where, I did go to my physician. I mean, I'm talking, I was only like 23, 24 years old. And
Yeah.
I was just
Yeah.
going already. I mean, that's all I knew.
Yeah.
Just go, 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 go,
Yeah.
go. And I remember him asking me, he's like, how much is how much intake are you having caffeine? I'm like, I
Hmm.
started looking for him like, holy cow. Like I'm just like nonstop
Hmm.
all day. I was,
Hmm.
7, 8, 9 cut.
Hmm.
And it was amazing after I cut back on that, the headaches and things went away.
Amazing.
After a short withdrawal period, but
Mhm.
people always ask me too, and I really don't know the answer to this, because it's just one of the things. I don't have a
Mhm.
lot of vices, but man, do I love coffee. I mean, I just love the
Mhm.
taste of it. So
Mhm.
being a doctor, what advice could you give of like what's too much? Is there too
Mhm.
much? Is
Mhm.
there not enough?
Mhm. Yeah, caffeine's a great question. So, and I can tell you, identify. I started drinking coffee as a 5-year-old. I love the taste. I would
Oh
sneak
wow.
it at church with my cousin, and we would
Nice.
hide behind the bulletin board with our cup of coffee with all the cream and the sugar on top of it. And my grandparents would let us have little sips at family get-togethers, and my dad was the first person to find out that and anybody I knew about good coffee, and we were grinding our own grains and stuff like way early, like late 80s, late 70s, early 80s, like early. And I also love coffee, and but what I can tell you is I also feel like I drank my lifetime allotment before I was 27, and my body doesn't like it now, and I have to really
Wow.
back off. But I love it, and so I totally can relate.
Yeah.
What I There are some people who do not metabolize caffeine well at all, and they may be drinking it, and it is really bad for their bodies. Their body, it is like a toxic substance to their body. And there are other people who can metabolize some caffeine well, and it can actually help their body function better and helps their brain work better and everything work better. So when you look at coffee studies, there have been studies where it shows, oh, a little bit of caffeine is so good for you. And then yet we also know that it's not great for everyone. So there is a there is a genetic expression difference between people. What I would say is, or what I'm listening for, and what you
Mhm.
can kind of look at for yourself is, how does it feel in you? I'm all about you getting empowered to take care of you and understanding how you can run you better. We're all individual and unique, and you need to see, how does this actually make me feel? Some people do much better with certain types of coffee versus, and other people better with a green tea, and other people better with a matcha, because they all have different chemical properties, and your body may like one versus another better. Some of us just need to not drink it because it's too much for the body. Now, what I will say, for those of you who are like, oh, phew, she said I could drink coffee, I feel so much better now. For those of you who are using coffee and or sugar or other stimulants to keep yourself functioning in the day, that's a sign. That's a sign that you have an underlying issue. If you have to have your coffee, that's a problem, because we should not be dependent on a stimulant to function. Now, there are some people who have some level of attention differences in their brain, and a little bit of caffeine, especially some of the ones with more phenolic acid and, like, the green teas and stuff, can actually be beneficial and really do help them focus a bit. And so a small amount of that can be very helpful for those people. But most of us who get addicted to drinking coffee, and man, I was so one of those people, that's a problem. And so if you're dragging until that 3 o'clock second espresso, that's a problem. If you get up in the morning, you're like, I cannot function until I have my coffee, that's something to look at. And just as my personal experience evidence, I went through a medical school without any caffeine,
Oh,
and I had
wow.
a child. So I decided to become a doctor when I was pregnant with him. And so I stopped drinking when I was pregnant, drinking coffee when I was pregnant with him. And it is possible to do these things.
That is good. Yeah, I mean, that is very good to know for people. I had one particular person that I'm thinking of right now. I mean, he just completely, I think it's been 2 years he's been off coffee,
Yeah.
but like night and day for him. I mean,
Yeah.
absolutely night and day.
When I stopped drinking coffee, I had this miraculous realization that I could take a nap if I was tired and get fully rested and actually heal my body. Whereas before it was, oh, I'm feeling tired, I just need another cup of coffee. And what you're really doing if you're overdoing the caffeine is you're just slamming on that stress response in your body. And that is stimulating you to trigger your own internal espresso of that high cortisol level. And that chronic high cortisol level is breaking down your body. It's a breakdown situation. It's meant for short emergencies to help you run for the saber-toothed tiger, and then your body's supposed to reset. But if we're staying on this constant high alert, which is what caffeine does,
Hmm.
then you are breaking down your system, and you're shooting yourself in your foot in terms of building up energy.
Yeah, and again, I'm not a doctor, but what I know from cortisol, especially when I'm in with families and things like that, those
Yeah,
higher levels when they stay elevated like that, that's damaging to brain tissue
it is.
too. I
It
mean,
is.
your body, your brain, and I
Yeah.
don't think people realize that. And
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting. You just said something that kind of triggers a thought that I want to share, because you have so
okay.
many leaders that are listening here. Is that when you said when you're in there with family. So I'm not sure if you're doing group with families as a group, which is cool if you do. But I will say that the kind of energy that we put out is contagious. Like, we do mirror and pick up
Mhm.
energy from each other. And so if you're a leader and you're leading from this stress express state that's stimulated by these artificial external things, then that kind of stress that is also a breakdown process in the body is going to be what is going to be the culture around you, your company culture. And it's not an organic field, that's not going to bring the best fruit,
Right. Yeah,
for
that's
you individually or for your team or for whatever your company is putting out.
yeah, that's a great point because I mean that goes back to the culture. That's the culture of the company. That's
Right.
and then for parents,
Exactly.
man, just
Same thing. Same thing. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of implications there. So, uh, again, before I forget here, you do have some information on your website. So, for you could first share the website site and then the quiz people can take. So we don't forget that. I don't want to forget
Sure.
that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, so go ahead and tell us about that.
Yeah. So the website is drjennytufenkian.com. And on the website, there is information about all different things that I can offer if you're interested in some support.
Hmm.
But there's a quiz on there that just takes a few minutes. And this quiz helps you identify what might be your root cause of why you're so tired. And this is something that I created using the very same algorithm I use in clinic to help people heal with their chronic fatigue and myalgic encephalitis. And so this is something that people have found to be really helpful to kind of like, oh, I didn't realize that was going on with me. So go ahead and check that out if that interests you. I also have group programs and one-on-one, and I also do work with people in teams and corporate. So if you're interested in talking about some of this on some other level, reach out. I would be super happy to see if we can put something together that would serve you and your team.
Yeah, and how long does that quiz take on your website?
Maybe 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's well worth your time to go
Right.
and take that. All right, folks. Like everybody's like, oh, it's an assessment. It's like, well, it doesn't take that long. Just go ahead and do it. If you can find out all this information that's gonna like help you and possibly save you.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so coming back to this whole idea of chronic fatigue, what we've witnessed since 2020, right,
Hmm.
is COVID.
Yep.
Um, I had my wife and I both had COVID at the same time. We had it over Thanksgiving, the first year that it was live, and I didn't necessarily stop my exercise schedule or anything like that. Although my temperature was extremely high for 4 or 5 days,
Mm.
but my question to you is, I really was in a funk afterwards,
Like
like
mood wise.
well, just all over the place. I didn't have my sense of smell and taste did not come back for 8 months.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just long. It was
Yeah.
drawn out. I mean, my wife would look at me. She's like, "What you want for dinner?" I'm like, "Just make it crunchy because I can't taste anything." And I would try all the time. I mean, I'm biting into onions. I'm just pouring hot sauce in my mouth, like just something.
Crazy.
And but
Yeah.
it was so hard for what I do because I got to be on. But my
Yeah.
mind was just in a fog, and I think
Yeah.
people are still. Well, I don't think I know because some of
Yeah.
the people that
Yeah.
I'm trying to help are dealing with this. Like,
Yeah.
what are the well, one, to get, is it true that there is such a thing as this long COVID piece? And explain that too, because you talk
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Mm-hmm.
We've discussed
Mm-hmm.
off camera here about the chronic fatigue with that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then like, what could we be doing about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, long COVID definitely exists. That's huge. I think it's very underdiagnosed because you may have had COVID and it can show up a month later, where all of a sudden you're dragging, you've got the brain fog, and there can be different symptoms for different people. And I think a lot of doctors still, well, I know a lot of physicians still aren't aware enough of chronic fatigue, myalgic encephalitis, and long COVID. So it's underdiagnosed. Even if you go to your doctor and say, oh, I'm tired, too often they'll say, well, your labs are all normal and you look great. So, it must be age, even though you're 42 years old, or it's because you're running a business or whatever. And so yes, it's very real. The brain inflammation piece is huge. And I really think that there is a lot of neuroinflammation that's going on, and that causes the brain fog and it causes the fatigue. And what I would say, and this is something that's actually really been fascinating for me to realize, is that a lot of the things that cause a little bit of a mood shift, a little bit of depression or lower mood, or a little bit of anxiety, lower energy, brain fog, are all caused by the same thing in the brain. It's the brain being in an inflammatory state and the brain not being able to stop or slow down that inflammatory state. And if this continues, it increases your risk for the different dementias, Alzheimer's,
Yes.
Parkinson's, all
Yeah.
those kinds of things. So this is really a health issue that
Hmm.
we need to be addressing. So if you're dealing with brain fog, it's something that you want to focus and pay attention to. And if you're dealing with fatigue, it's something you want to pay attention to. Now, what can you do about it? There are health foundations that, for all of us, if we address those, it's going to help anything that you do get better. And for some people, it's just addressing the health foundations, and that can boost your health up to a level where your body naturally returns to its normal vitality. The body has an internal intelligence and wants and knows how to become healthy. You need to create the right environment for it so that it can become healthy. And I go through those health foundations in a lot of my materials on my website if you want to check that out. I know we probably don't have time to go into them all right now. And there are 5 root causes that are indicated, that are there, that cause people to go into long COVID or this myalgic encephalitis chronic fatigue pattern. And that can be a chronic virus that gets reactivated, like Epstein-Barr virus. A lot of us have that, and that's very underdiagnosed and relatively easy to treat. It could be toxic, over too many toxins from heavy metals, glyphosates, from different things in our environment, including mold and mycotoxins, which
Hmm.
many of us have. Pacific
Yeah.
Northwest girl, massive mold issues here, massive. It can be from that what I called about that a hormone triangle.
Uh-huh.
It could be that stress piece that could be a real issue, or it could be your mitochondria are
Yeah.
challenged. And so these are the things that are important to look at to see what are your root causes. And again, that quiz goes through that. And so I really think that what I would say to you is, if you are dealing with the brain fog, the fatigue, the mood changes, things just don't feel right, you're struggling to be that high performer that you want to be, that you're doing everything you can to become, and yet something in your body or your being is pulling you back, then look into it. Get the support you need to figure out what those things are so that you can map out your path to health. Sometimes it's a short journey for people to get back, and sometimes it's a longer journey. It depends on how many different pieces we're working with here.
Hmm. So yeah, I guess the last thing, and if you would, come back, like there's so many, like I've got so many notes all over the place because I have so many questions, because I love what you do and how you come at it. I mean, you so you talked earlier about reset. If somebody is having these things, and we both know, I mean, a lot of people that listen and watch know that they're either slowly burning out, they have chronic fatigue, they've suffered from long COVID, whatever. What can we do to actually hit the reset button?
Mhm. So I I know you want an answer that meets everyone, and I just have to say it depends. It
Yeah.
depends on what your root cause is. It
Hmm.
depends on which health foundations are out of whack for you. For
Yeah.
somebody who is not sleeping, that's the key health foundation they need to address, because the body can't heal if it's not sleeping. It's in a chronic inflammatory state. If if your digestion's messed up, you got to have your gut in line to heal, because that's where the whole immune system functions from.
Hmm.
And it's where we build our neurotransmitters. So it depends on which, and those are just the health foundations. When we start looking at the root cause, it depends on your root cause. Now, that said, if you're talking about, when we talked about the burnout piece and the chronic fatigue piece, if you're wondering how deep do I really need to go into this, you can start structuring some mini resets in your day and in your week. And this is one of the things that I think that we forget the power of. We forget the power of a short reset and how amazing that can be. And if that helps you, then that's going to be a sign for you that maybe your problems aren't so deep. And if that's not enough, or you do have a short reset and you're like, oh man, I need another couple weeks, then that's a sign to you that you need more. You need more help and more guidance and more support. And I'll just say one little thing, that when I was recovering from long COVID myself, I was really impressed with the power of a 15-minute break. So I'd have a work day and I'd get tired and I would just go lie down for 15 minutes. And it was
Mhm.
amazing how that allowed my brain a few minutes to calm down.
Yeah.
So I didn't keep pushing through and creating more stress for my body, more inflammation for my body, more breakdown. It was actually a time to rebuild. And I always love to say this when I'm speaking to people who are leaders, is that I think there's a place for us to understand that these chronic conditions are really part of everyday life for many people. And if it's not
Yeah.
you, maybe somebody on your team. And having more compassion and understanding about that. It doesn't mean that they're a weak person or they're not able to do their job well. It just may mean that they need to change their schedule so that they can support their body in this time so that it can heal. So whether that's taking a few minutes and lying down and doing a 11-minute shavasana on the on the floor in the office, or whether it's pulling out early some days and going home and taking a nap, or what that schedule looks like, I think it's really important that we start realizing that we are bodies and we do need support.
Well, and I think going back to what you were saying just about the culture, I mean, I think the younger generation, like I'll watch my kids sometimes and, they've only been out in the work environment 2 years, but,
Yeah.
you know, they have a tendency to go, 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 go.
Yeah.
And I think, well, I know because I've seen it in the companies that I'm working with. When I'm working with younger high potentials, they're like that too. I was just with a group this week and we were talking about this, ironically,
Yeah.
like they're young. I mean, these are 20 somethings
Yeah. Yeah.
that are high potential, that
Yeah.
have been targeted as high potential in their companies,
Yeah.
and they're just watching everybody like me that's older than them, that are supervisors and managers, go, 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 and they're already burnout, which is
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah.
And that's maybe another day, another topic, but I'm scared if we don't start addressing these things, that we're just going to have more and more and more. And I think that's, from my standpoint, being a mental health practitioner as well, that's what has scared me a little bit through COVID, and then having this kind of unbalance between hybrid, remote, in-person work, all these
Right.
things that are just increasing stress and
Right.
increasing stress on the family as well. So
Right. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot I can say here, and maybe we should just come back and talk about another time, because there's a whole lot that I just want to say right now. We're gonna blow through any kind of time you have here if we keep going.
yeah. Yeah, I'll
Um,
definitely have you back, Dr. Jenny. This is, I mean, all these little tidbits. I have tons and tons of notes in front of me. So if we could come back and start talking about that, and uh, you know, I would love to just get on there. If people aren't encouraged by it, I'm going to get on there between now and next time and take that quiz and maybe share some of those results too, so
that
people
would be
can
fascinating.
understand, because I work with so many people, at least once or twice a day. No, I'm not uh, overemphasizing that. It's literally once or twice a day. I'm so tired. I'm so burnt out. I hear
Right.
it all the
Right.
time,
Right.
and
Right.
sometimes it comes from this voice too.
Right. Yeah. Right. Right. No kidding. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so I think it's important, where's that tired coming from? Is it on the physical level, that mental, emotional, or energetic level? And
Yeah,
what can you do? Because sometimes it's because we're energy sponges and we're picking up too much stuff and we're not clearing ourselves, or it's that emotional tape stuff that's pulling us down, or it is just a physical thing. Not just physical is huge.
yeah,
And so which level is it? And what do you need? What do you need to put in your toolkit so that you can handle all the stresses that are out there in the world? Because we are all being bombarded with a huge amount of stress. And one of the things I think we need to become more intelligent about is, how do we stay in our humanity and stay in our light and our love as the world is changing so quickly around us, right? Our grandchildren will probably have robots as playmates. How is it that we're going to stay in touch with our humanity and in our love and stay healthy as all this stuff is changing so rapidly around us?
All right. I'm going to leave it with that because that was good. All right. But I don't want to forget to mention you also, like us, you have a YouTube channel. I believe it's Natural Healing with Dr. Jenny. That's right.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay. Would love to have you back. We'll get that scheduled here soon, Dr. Jenny. But thank you for being just a wealth of information and all that you do. Folks, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed this. I know I certainly did. Be sure to, subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff on the channel here. And if you need more information, visit us at centerforvictory.com. And just remember, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, make this your best day yet. We'll see you soon.